driven by ideas, innovation, and an influence. Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio, where insight meets execution and powerful stories shape real-world success. Here, we sit down with authors, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders to explore the ideas, strategies, and experiences defining our time. This is where clarity meets ambition and vision turns into action. So lean in, stay curious, and join the conversation. You're listening to Dove and Dragon Radio, where the dove brings clarity and the dragon drives results.
Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with my special guest, Tricia. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So, what do you do exactly?
Well, I am currently an author and a life coach and a workshop host and a person who likes to help other people heal.
You have your hands in a lot of things.
I do.
So, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, actually, none of that came first. The story as it goes, I lost my husband to suicide 10 years ago, and I was actually in finance for 25 years. And as a result of his death, we owned a business together. My life basically imploded. And in the process of imploding, besides finding myself, I also found a different path. So they all kind of came together at the same time. I mean, basically all of it.
Well, first, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank
Losing
you.
a loved one that way, it's tragic. I can't even imagine that one. I can't even, there's no words there.
Nope.
But you came back from it. You found yourself and you're persevering.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So you are okay. What's your book begin with?
So the book is the stories we tell ourselves. And so really that started everything. After my husband's death, I started realizing that most of what I was doing in life really wasn't really my authentic self. I'd never stopped to say, is this true for me? I just kind of was on autopilot. And I started realizing that this isn't something that's unique to me. Many of us are programmed from childhood, our peers, our teachers, our parents, our religion, and we make decisions based on that programming that create a life that oftentimes isn't the life we would have chosen if we had taken the time to say, is this true for me? So the book was born out of that.
Well, okay, let's go into that because that's actually 99% of humans. We are programmed by everyone around us.
Yep.
You can't do this because you can't do that. It's not
right.
Hey, what do you actually want to do?
Right. And I think that's exactly it. I mean, I think part of the human condition is challenging that programming. So I happen to believe that midlife crises are actually part of that process where we're coming face to face with, hey, you know what? I did all the things I'm supposed to do, and yet I'm still not happy. So what's going on here? And really, it's that soul behind the scenes saying, you know what? This isn't your truth. Go find it.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's very much, okay, you think about childhood. You go through, how much bullying do we go through because we don't fit in with this clique or that clique or whatever else. Then we go home to our parents. You have to be doctor, lawyer. This is my age growing up. If you're not a successful doctor, lawyer, something, you're not going to make it in this world.
Right.
And then you go into, hey, I want to do something we call woohoo because it's crazy. No one else is doing it.
Exactly.
Become an author, become a musician, become
yes,
whatever it is you want to do. And then by 50, you're like, what? I wanted to do this back here. Why didn't I follow my passion?
Yep. And so, so following your passion, I mean, we talk about it, right? But we don't actually know what that means. And most of us don't do it. And we live a life of making believe we're happy, making believe we're content. And then you wake up one day. In my case, I mean, it was shoved right in my face because my husband and I owned a business together, and I had to make a decision whether it was financial services. I had to decide in a matter of months whether I'm going to go forward or not. And I had two boys at the time who were 11 and 19. And I was really ill equipped to be running a massive business and taking care of the mental health of those two boys and myself. So I ended up closing the business. And from that, it became very apparent to me that I never truly loved the business anyhow. And that was fascinating to me because I was very, very successful. So I think the programming can make us believe things about ourselves that aren't necessarily true. And when we believe those things, we get so entrenched in that story that everyone believes it, and that becomes more and more entrenched. And at some point, we don't even know who we are.
Correct. I mean, look at it. You went through it. You came out the other side, and we're very you came out the other side. But how many people are listening to this that are going through it right now? Those could be your doctors. Those could be your surgeons. Those could be anyone in any field in doing anything. Just because successful, they're making 6-7 figures a year, doesn't mean they're happy.
And that's really a God-given right. I mean, I used to think happiness was something that we have to work towards, that we have to sacrifice and we have to work so hard and we've got to accumulate things and, money and material possessions. And then someday we're going to be happy someday. And we convince ourselves that that's enough. But then we realize at some point that happiness doesn't come from outside of ourselves. We can't buy happiness. So yeah, I think, I have absolutely no problem with someone making a ton of money. I have no problem with somebody who follows a passion of being a physician or anything, quite frankly, as long as it is truly their passion and not their programming. Because we can never be happy with the programming. No matter how hard we try, we can never be happy. And as I said, this is our right to be happy. We're not meant to suffer on this planet. That is not what we're supposed to be doing. And many of us think it's normal,
No, we're not meant to suffer. We're meant to be happy humans.
Yes, yes, yes.
And what happens when we're unhappy? Misery loves company, so we make those around us miserable.
Absolutely. We create an environment that just it makes that happen over and over again, so that we bring on more unhappiness to ourselves just by merit of being unhappy ourselves. And it permeates everything. That's why we talk about ancestral trauma. And it's because when a family brings this trauma or programming to their children, well, those children will bring it to their children, and so on and so forth. So my goal has been, since my husband's death, is to break that cycle. And when I look back, I see the programming in all the women in my life, my mother, my grandmother, her mother, and it was all the same. It looked different on the surface, but ultimately it was the same. And it was basically living smaller than we really are, allowing ourselves to believe that this is good enough. And, unless we are pursuing our passion, it's never good enough, because we're here to do something. I mean, and I don't think everyone necessarily has to do a big thing. If your passion is to serve food somewhere, that's awesome, and be so happy doing it. But if your passion is to write a book, go write the book.
Right. I mean, okay, writing the book is very hard. Okay?
It is.
It really is. I have several books. So getting your ideas on paper is hard. But guess what? It's rewarding. Nothing in this life is going to come easy and not be rewarding.
And it can't, because look at it this way. Everything is about contrast on this planet, okay? As a human being, what makes joy wonderful? Sadness, right? Because we know what sadness is. It's that comparison that allows us to really appreciate joy. And so let's say we wrote a book and it was a piece of cake. Where's the joy in that? I mean, anyone could do it, right? So being able to buckle down and sit at the desk and type away and put those ideas on paper and be vulnerable. Many times, my book, I'm very vulnerable in the book. I mean, anyone who reads my book knows who I am, good, bad, and ugly. So it's not necessarily about it being easy. It's about it being real. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, I think, in this world, is finding our authenticity. Because when we get to that place, passion comes easily. We know exactly what our path is. It's just
Exactly.
programming.
Right. I have 2 daughters. They're
Okay.
both in food service. One of them, she's great at what she does. I wish she would apply herself to go further,
Mm-hmm.
but she's happy. I
That's all
don't
that
want,
matters.
yeah, as a parent, I have to step back. Do I want more for my childhood? Yes, I do. Is my daughter happy? Yes, she is. If she wants to go further and be happy somewhere else, I will support her. But she's happy. So why am I going to mess with that? A lot of parents don't do that.
Nope. And that was a former me. So before 10 years ago, I was type A. I was hard driven. I was, I'm going to have a million balls in the air. And you know what? My kids were going to do the same thing. They're going to be, just like me, essentially. And, I expected a certain level of academics. I expected a certain level of extracurricular, success, that kind of thing. And, after my husband died, I realized really quickly, actually, like, this is just plain silliness, because I'm just basically projecting all my dreams onto my kids, and I don't even know who they are. And so, the first night after my husband, I was told he died. So I'll give you the quick story. 1:30 in the morning, 4 police officers knock on my door, asked to be invited in, and they tell me my husband had taken his life. And as you can imagine, as you pointed out, hard to believe. And even 10 years later, there are days I wake up and think, is this really my life? Because it's just so shocking. And it's still shocking. Will always be shocking. But that night, here's the interesting thing. Because it was such a shock, I had no warning. It was as if all the ego that ever defended me, the image, everything about this construct that I had created about myself was completely obliterated. I mean, I'm talking obliterated. And so when people were coming in and out and asking me, how I'm doing, they got the vulnerable, authentic Tricia that I would never, ever shown before. And I saw that in the first night. I saw it immediately. It was the first time that I actually felt connected to myself in a true way, connected to humanity, connected to my friends. And it was really so visceral that there was no possibility of unseeing it after that. Now, most people don't get that, get something like that, and certainly don't wish it on anybody. But we all get opportunities in our lives when things happen. It doesn't have to be so traumatic. Sometimes it's simple as your kids leaving home, as an empty nester, or you lose your job, or you go through a divorce, or there is a sudden death in one way or the other. But, I believe in grieving. Very much so. It's a natural process of healing, but I also believe in the transformation after grieving. And that's the piece that is the most misunderstood, basically, is that after grieving, we have an opportunity to transform ourselves. And with that, if we see it that way, we can see that there might be a door opening to a different life and a different way of looking at things.
Right. Mine came at 28. I
Mm.
got sick. I had a stroke. I had
Oh my goodness.
brain surgery.
Oh,
And my life I was on track for what I wanted to do. And now
sure.
it's completely obliterated. Not the same, but same thing.
Same thing.
Right afterwards, everything's changes.
Yes.
Now how do you go forward?
Exactly. And it is different, but it is actually the same. I mean, one of the things I've learned is grieving is grieving. Loss is loss. There's no ranking like mine is worse than yours. I mean, the story might sound worse, but at the end of the day, the
It's the same
emotions are
thing.
the same. It is the same thing. And, when you go through tremendous loss like that, there's, you have 2 choices. You can fight it. You really can. And you can stay stuck in the grieving process. You can be angry. You can be bitter. You could take the victim role. And a large part of people do that. But then you also could be the person that says, you know what? I'm going to see this differently, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to change my life. So the fact that you saw it is enormous, because a lot of people don't see it. They really don't see it.
Well, there's a stage. There's a lot of stages you have to go through. First,
Absolutely.
you go through the grief, then you go through the anger, then you go through the now what,
Yep.
and then you go, okay, I'm at rock bottom, basically, whatever rock bottom looks for at for anyone,
Exactly.
and then you start building. Now
Exactly.
you can stay at rock bottom. A lot of people do because
Yeah,
they get comfortable.
they do.
Guess
And
what?
it's funny.
I don't like comfort.
Well, and that's the first, the first step towards growth is your willingness to not be comfortable. I mean, people stop growth simply because it is uncomfortable. It's painful. I mean, it's not
Hmm.
easy. So you have to be willing to have the courage. I think it takes courage to actually
Hmm.
put yourself out there and say, you know what? I don't know what the answers are, but I know the path I was on before isn't the path I'm going to take anymore. I'm going to try something different. And I always liken it to, there's a riverbank and you want to get to the other side of the riverbank and you've made a decision, this side isn't working anymore. And so you take a leap, but for the period of time before you land, you're over the water. You're untethered. It feels very uncomfortable. And that's when all the good stuff happens, because you're basically saying, I want to get to the other side. What do I need to do? And that's where change happens. But it does take courage. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, actually. So anyone who does take those steps, I commend.
Yeah, but there's another element too. You also have you're trying to grow. Now who's holding you back?
Well, absolutely. And oftentimes, so who's holding you back? So here's the funny thing about that. Technically no one's holding us back except ourselves. And so we choose to have people in our lives that I think are mirrors and are opportunities to help us see ourselves better. So in my book, I've described a couple relationships that, even my marriage of 21 years. I mean, I did not have the psychological skill before his death to see what I needed to see, but since then I look at things much differently, and I can look at it, what most people would say, well, heck, that was a toxic relationship. This guy that you were seeing, he's awful. And then I look at it from the standpoint of, no, 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 no. I got to see where my weak points were with this person. And
Hmm.
so I chose him specifically so that subconsciously, obviously, I'm not a
Yeah.
masochist. And so I chose him subconsciously to help me heal. And when you look at people that way, and you recognize that everybody that crosses our path is an opportunity to either validate our goodness or show us, what needs to be healed, then you start looking at relationships differently, and you end up leaving people behind, and not necessarily even toxic people. Sometimes when you're on a growth path, and this was really hard for me, you end up leaving friends behind because they're not on the same path anymore. And we don't have skills. I always say this, we don't have skill set for breaking up with platonic friends. Like, we are not taught that. We're taught like
Yeah.
romantic partners for sure, maybe, but not platonic friends. But when you go through rapid growth that's significant, you can't help but have to understand that there will be certain people that won't be on the next part of your journey. It just is the way it is.
It really is. When you do something that actually you're passionate about, look
Mm-hmm.
at who is around you.
Yes.
How many people are going to be there when you get to that next step of
Yeah,
whatever your growth is? It's,
absolutely.
everyone says it's lonely at the top. No, you just find a new circle to
Yeah.
be with.
Yeah, and I think as humans we cling to the old because it's familiar and it feels comfortable, and we all have friends that we've had for a long time, and there are history friends. I call them history friends. We've shared a history, and they may not be on the same path anymore, but the history is sustains that relationship. But when you make rapid change, you change your entire energy of the person you are, and we attract by energy. So it makes sense on a quantum physics level why we end up losing people. It's because we're no longer on the same frequency. And for someone like myself who really had some significant attachment things to work through from childhood, losing a friend was devastating. And I can tell you, from the minute my husband died, like literally overnight, my whole friend group shifted, because some stepped forward People I would never expected, and others who I would have expected just couldn't handle it. And there was no judgment there because, quite frankly, how do we even know how to walk that path with somebody else? I mean, it's very, very challenging. But the shift happened immediately, and I've noticed it over the last 10 years. The shift has happened a couple times actually, and I've become more comfortable with it and recognize that we have a choice. We can stop our own growth and stay where we are, which is fine. Or if we choose to be on that growth path, then we have to recognize everything around us changes, and just to be open. They have that cliche, which isn't really a cliche. It's, when one door closes, another opens. Well, there's truth to that. If you're willing to be open minded to have the door open and let somebody else walk through, or another opportunity you could never have imagined.
Exactly. It's going to be, hey, I have this friend from elementary school. I've known them forever. They're here. They're comfortable. They're sitting on my couch eating popcorn every Friday night. But when you go through the growth, you look back, hey, that friend from kindergarten isn't there no more.
Yeah. I mean, and that's hard. I mean, I can say for sure that it is very challenging to lose relationships, but I think from a bigger perspective, we have to recognize that we are making room for the right people to be in our lives. Because, and I say right people, it's not like right or wrong. I say it from a vibrational standpoint, because if you're trying to grow and if that's your path, people that aren't on that path are actually holding you back. And that's kind of what you had mentioned before. And you don't want to be held back. I mean, we already as humans tend to live smaller than we need to, or that we should. And so people holding us back, whether it's just because they haven't, grown emotionally or psychologically, all it does is create resistance on our end, so that the opportunities that are presented to us, if we see them, are now inhibited. And it's not good. I mean, it's not good making ourselves smaller to make something work.
Exactly. You have to grow. Humans need to grow. If you think about it from the time you're born to the time you're here now, you have grown. You have to
Yes.
keep growing. You don't
Yes.
just
Yes.
stop because you turn 18 or 21 or 50 or whatever.
Right.
You have to keep growing. That could be going back to school. That could be reading a book. That could be changing jobs. That could be anything under the sun.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I look at it, I have this little joke, and it's like, I'm going to go out kicking and screaming. So it's like with a couple of my friends, I'll say kicking and screaming, in terms of like, I'm not going to just slide through to the last days of my life. And the reason why is because that's where the joy is. The passion isn't gliding into home base. The passion is running as hard as you can to get through, to get to home base. And that running as hard as you can is learning and finding passions. I mean, there's no reason to have a successful career that you loved and have it end and then just think it's done. Like, have another passion, because there's unlimited amounts of passion out there that might fit for you. And I look at it this way: the best thing that we can do for us, our families, our friends, our neighborhood, our community, our town, city, state, government, whatever, is to be passionate and have authenticity, because that energy level is so high that it permeates everything that we do. And to your point, every person we come in contact with is impacted in a positive way. So,
Exactly. It can be, hey, you smiled at this person opening a door for you. That
yes,
smile is contagious.
it is. It is. And kindness, we always say, be kind. And if you look through all the religions, um even current religions and past religions, you'll find that there's all of the religions have a golden rule about how we treat people. They might word it slightly different, but there's always a golden rule. And the reason is because kindness has an energy that is so large that when you do an act of kindness to somebody, it doesn't just stop there. It affects the person who's in line next to them, in the car after them. I mean, it really does create kindness. So it makes, here's the thing I learned. So when you're having a down day, because none of this means, I don't mean to like say that we're going to have the best days all the time. I mean, stuff happens. Let's be honest. We can't control life, so I don't even attempt to do that at this point in my life. Stuff happens, but how we perceive it is the key. And we have a choice on how we want to go out into the world. And part of that is if we go back and we understand why we do the things we do, and we hold ourselves accountable. Like, I'm in this career. Is this true for me? And I always say that's the number one question. Is this true for me? And we should be doing that all the time. We should be teaching our kids that. We should be, practicing that in every step that we make, every decision. Is this true for me? And be willing to say, no, it's not true for me. I don't care if 100 people are doing it. It's not true for me. And that's how you get to the place where acts of kindness just happen immediately because you're at that vibration all the time.
Exactly. I mean, we can sit on the couch, eat popcorn, and be miserable. How many people out there in TV land are doing that today? Or you can actually look at yourself and say, wait, why am I not happy? What will make me happy? And I guarantee it's not that bag of popcorn.
Right. And it's true. I mean, and again, I want to emphasize, I don't want to overlook the fact that there are people with serious illnesses and mental health challenges and financial concerns. I mean, those are all real things. However, even with those things, we still have an opportunity to look at life through a different lens. And basically, the lens that I choose to look at life through at this point, to your point, I'm not going to sit on the couch feeling sorry for myself. I'm just not, because I know that that's not going to get me anywhere. And it's like my husband's death. I mean, it obliterated everything. And it became very apparent nothing was going back the way it was, and it hasn't. It wasn't even a choice. It was done. And I could have easily rode that for the rest of my life, quite frankly. I mean, I always joke in my neighborhood, they always give me like a little extra room because, I lost my husband to suicide, and I joke about it, but there's probably some truth to that. And, you get some birth when people see that and expect you, even look at you maybe like you're a victim of something horrible. But yeah, it happened and it was horrible. And I had to work really hard to make sure my kids understood that it wasn't about them and it wasn't their fault and that we're not going to carry the shame. But one of the most important things I told them was, and it was within a week, my older son was going back to college, and I was scared to death to send him off to college because I don't have eyes on him now. And I knew how difficult this was. And I remember saying to him, and sometimes words just come to you, but I remember sitting him down and giving him a couple pieces of advice. And I said, one of the things I said was, I'm never going to allow the two of you to use your father's death as an excuse for your failing. I remember saying that, and I remember them looking me in the eye thinking, what? But it has held true because neither boy was ever allowed to be a victim of their circumstances. Obviously they had grief. Obviously we had a ton to go through. Obviously it still impacts them, but they're not victims.
No.
Simple as that.
They're survivors, not the victims.
They're survivors. Exactly. And, that was something we practiced right from the very beginning. And, I think when we give up on life, we sit on the couch and we watch TV, and we eat popcorn or whatever it is we're doing. That's okay. I mean, I have no problem with that. But when that becomes all you do, you make yourself small. And that's what I'm talking about. And even if you never, you've never been an athlete, as an example, heck, go try something new. Who cares if you fail at it? It doesn't matter. The key is trying to create a sense of life and passion within you, because that's what drives everything else within us. That's what brings opportunities to us, is that energy of trying and the passion.
That is very true. But we are almost out of time. So how can our viewers and our listeners find you, find your book, and continue the conversation?
Yes. So I have a website, apathforhealing.com, and 4 is the number 4. I have an email, apathforhealing@gmail.com, and that also is a 4. I have 2 books. My books are on Amazon and a few other places, but that's the easiest. And the book is The Stories We Tell Ourselves. And there's a workbook that accompanies that. They actually stands alone, but it basically takes you through the process of how to challenge yourself to see those stories that you've been telling yourself that may or may not be true.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
This was a quick 30 minutes, if
It
you
was.
believe that. But thank you so much. And for our viewers and our listeners, happy reading.
Thank you.
And we're out.